Hello and welcome to Media Musings. Special, hello to anyone who is lurking in the chat and or watching in the future. So, yesterday, Across the Spiderverse was released into theaters, and I figured, given all the hype it's getting, we should probably sacrifice a week to the algorithm and talk about Spider-Man. Not much of a sacrifice, I know, but unfortunately, we already covered Into the Spider-Verse a couple years back. So I figured we'd do the next best thing and cover the live action version.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So now it's a shame Noodle couldn't make this one, because there is a question that I would have asked them in regards to this movie, because I don't think they've seen many of the other Spider-Man movies, like especially the Tom Holland ones, because they're not as big into the MCU as I am.
Yeah.
And so I would have asked if it was still as enjoyable going into it blind as it is going into it, having seen other Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, I think that'd definitely be interesting, because I think that it would be good for anyone who's got a perspective of, because a lot of this, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of this is fan service.
Well,
there's a lot of fan service here.
I wouldn't actually call it fan service. I'd probably because fan service does tend to have the connotation that it's empty.
Okay.
that it's just there to give the fans something to latch onto and basically patch up lack of story and such. In this, it's more of a thematic character study, because or rather a use of character, a study in the use of character in storytelling.
Yeah.
And because so spoilers for a 2-year-old movie that's been thoroughly spoiled by the internet.
Yeah, I think we're safe now.
Yeah.
I think we're safe.
And to be fair, like, despite how much Sony and Disney did to hide the fact that the other Spider-Man do show up was kind of spoiled before the movie even dropped.
To be honest, I don't even read a lot of I don't even read a lot of the stuff about like things for upcoming movies, and
No.
I fucking knew, and I fucking knew. So that says how bad it is.
No, because like because when the trailer came out that showed the Sinister Six, for lack of a better term, it's like people on the internet were able to like, hey, something's janky with that footage. They deleted something out of those, know.
But I mean, even before any of the trailers, it was out there. You know, it was out there.
But I think it would be best to go in chronological order, because the movie really does present its themes in chronological order anyways.
Yeah.
But and the reason about that first bit about wondering how it would feel coming into it blind is because the movie opens pretty much right at the post credit scene for Spider-Man Far From Home.
I was going to say it literally picks up from the point where the last movie left off.
Yeah.
So and I'll just get this one out because he's here straight away in the beginning of this. I got a bit of a kick out of them turning Jameson into Alex Jones.
Yeah.
I got a bit of a kick out of that.
Because and once again, this ties back into Spider-Man No Way Home's use of character to make thematic commentary, because originally J. Jonah Jameson was a caricature of one of the editors at Marvel, with a little bit of Frederick Wortham, dash in, because that was, while he was going on his, anti-comics, they're corrupting the youth tirade.
Yeah.
Until he recanted all his statements in the 90s, because he was impressed by how creative comic fan culture was. But then by then it was too little too late.
Yeah, the damage had been done by then. So
yeah. Yeah, and J. Jonah Jameson has always been kind of the caricature of yellow journalism figure. So what is the modern version of that? It's people like Alex Jones, and the recently unemployed Tucker Carlson.
If Spider-Man, if I'll just say, if there's an alternate universe where Spider-Man is British, Jameson's going to be Piers Morgan.
Yeah.
So,
and
or he's going to be on GB News. He's going to be.
Well, and also in the modern day, print newspapers are pretty much dead. So to fit in with the contemporary nature of the MCU, you do kind of have to pattern J. Jonah Jameson off the modern media.
Yeah, and I think but turning the Daily Bugle into, I mean, it's not even subtle. I mean, it's just turning it into InfoWars.
Yeah,
is because I mean, I mean, if there is the poster child for, if there is such thing as a poster child for for shit journalism, it is Alex Jones. You know?
And I mean, even later in the movie, we have him selling supplement pills.
Yeah. But it was even it's one or two of the things where just even little things I noticed when the camera stopped rolling or whatever, and I can't remember what he actually said, but he just one word, and his voice sounded like Alex Jones. It was fucking beautiful.
Yes, J.K. Simmons, you're a legend.
Yeah,
but
and the fact that he's because he's played Jameson in two of the universes here as well.
Yeah,
and it's in each one he's done this rather. It's a unique take on it. I mean, I'd say the first one's much more similar to the Jameson of the comics, and And he absolutely nailed it in the Tobey Maguire movies. He absolutely nailed Jameson, but in in this like I said, I got a kick out of the InfoWars parody in this movie with Jameson. So we've got that out of the way.
But and one last thing to get out of the way, I know my shirt isn't exactly thematic, unfortunately, and I'm confronted with this.
Neither is my picture.
Yeah, and I'm confronted with this fact. Like every time we cover Spider-Man on Media Musings, is I don't have any shirts with Spider-Man on them. So I figured, I'd go with the other famous Marvel wisecracker.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I got to actually say, it's very, very quick detail. This is even before the Deadpool movies were out. One of the funniest fan videos that someone did on YouTube was a Deadpool pranking Spider-Man and sneaking in there and replacing his web fluid with silly string.
Yeah,
and then he accidentally kills Spider-Man.
Yeah,
and it made me laugh because I was at the time because I was like, if any of you have read the comics, that is the sort of shit Deadpool would actually do.
Yeah, So, so you've had a weblog? Well, it was an existential crisis sort of
thing. Yeah.
Well,
that's foreshadowing, people.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing.
We'll put a pin in it.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's the thing: can we set ourselves a challenge? Can we actually get that thing up as many times as we did in the X10 show?
I don't think we.
I don't think that's possible.
Yeah. So it opens up with the end of Far From Home. So a recap for those who haven't seen Far From Home. It ends with Mysterio framing Spider-Man for his murder.
Yeah.
And, because, Mysterio's the master illusionist, and actually, like, Far From Home is probably one of, like, I know it's like the only live action depiction of Mysterio, but I hope it will stay that way, because that was about damn near perfect in my opinion.
I thought it was very good. I know there was some people slated it, but it's one of the things with Marvel films is you can always guarantee it's going to divide fans in some way or another.
Yeah. But because Mysterio is his whole thing is using special effects to to control people's perception of reality, and that was very well done in that movie.
Yeah.
But anyways, not only does he frame Spider-Man for his death, but he also reveals that Spider-Man, he basically doxes Peter Parker.
He outs him,
Yeah.
He outs him in front of the world.
And the opening crawl is literally the audio from that video, and then it cuts to exactly where Far From Home left off. And we get our first bit of commentary on what it's like to become a controversial figure in today's society.
Yeah.
Where, Peter Parker is having to, run from crowds of people who either idolize him because they're on his side or want to kill him because Mysterio was right.
Yeah. So
where so basically, and actually this is kind of fitting in with Pride Month, and I only just realized that Peter Parker's very existence has become a political wedge issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
After he has been forcefully outed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I said to Ring earlier today, actually, when during our pre-show, that they should just rename this month "Watch the Right Wing Lose Their Shit" month.
Yeah.
And it just because it seems to get worse every fucking year.
Yeah.
And this year, I think it's been really fucking toxic.
Yeah. And hey, Gary.
Hey, Gary.
And so we, after Peter and MJ escape back to, his apartment, we have a brief scene where he's trying to keep Aunt May from learning that Spider-Man's been outed.
Yeah. Which goes about as well as you.
It's basically it in terms of fan service.
Yeah.
I'd argue this is more fan servicey than the appearance of the villains and such from the other movies.
Yeah,
because nothing there are a few things more Spider-Man than Peter Parker trying to clear up a Spider-Man based misunderstanding. Because, Aunt May thinks that she caught him and MJ getting busy.
She opens the door, and it's certainly, I mean, to be honest, it's probably how anyone would interpret that if you walked in and saw that. It's like,
and Peter learns that Aunt May and Happy just broke up. And so Peter's trying to help with Aunt May's issues while trying to clear out the scenario without worrying her too much, because he is now a wanted fugitive because he was framed for not only murder but also a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
And this all ends when Damage Control, which is essentially the FBI's superhuman arm, comes in to detain everyone. And okay, so brief tangent is for those of you who haven't watched Miss Marvel, the Disney Plus series, Damage Control as arm of the United States government is handled much better in that series, especially when you're talking on how minority communities are over policed.
I mean, my understanding is, because I only really know, I haven't watched that, but my understanding is that Department of Damage Control, I think that's exclusively an MCU thing, isn't it? Or is it in the comics and I've just never come across it?
So in the comics, damage control was basically the guys who fix all the buildings that are wrecked in superhero fights. They just
Yeah,
clean up the collateral damage, and they're
yeah.
like a construction company basically. But so damage control does exist outside the MCU, but
It's different.
but it's
Yeah.
different.
Hmm.
um
I did enjoy some of the I mean the interrogation. I mean you kind of knew poor Ned would put his foot in it.
yeah.
You knew he
and
would.
and for I feel that for those of you who haven't seen Homecoming or Far From Home,
Hmm.
this interrogation scene is a great introduction to who our characters are.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is a tried and true tactic of filmmaking, where you have I think it was most notably done in Goodfellas, but I could be wrong because I haven't actually seen Goodfellas.
We're doing that on Media Musings then.
I
You've just said that. Now that has to be an episode of Media Musings.
yeah.
Okay.
Like, I think we had it slated for Mob Month, but
I think
like, I
yeah.
lost internet like halfway through it.
Yeah, I think we had it scheduled once before, didn't we? And there was some reason we had to put a pin in it.
Yeah. But so correct me if I'm wrong, but Goodfellas does have a similar montage where you get to learn the characters through interrogation.
Oh, I'm not entirely sure. I think
Or I could have it mixed up with some other mob movie that I'm only vaguely aware
it's been a little while since I've watched Goodfellas, but I don't recall that being how the characters were introduced.
Yeah.
But it definitely was a good way of, okay, you get especially with like the two like some Peter's friends there of MJ and Ned, and you sort of see that even though she's a young girl, MJ can handle herself for these people, and because Ned can't, he just falls for what is a very simple trick, and puts his foot in it.
Yeah, and
Because
like, not only
he's always
that, but you get the sense that Aunt May was has been around this kind of block before. Like, she probably was involved in protests in the 60s and probably has a few arrests under her belt.
It's you're just like, this isn't her first rodeo for her long.
Yeah.
It's not explicitly said that it's that, but you're definitely left with that impression.
Yeah.
And MJ's handles them very well. She knows how to handle them.
Yeah. She's like, she literally says, "I know what you're doing, and I know not to talk until my lawyer gets here." And then she looks straight at the, fake mirror / hidden camera.
Yeah.
And waves at it.
Yeah. That's that's fantastic. And speaking of lawyers, should we go there?
I think we should discuss the cameo of the very good lawyer.
Very good lawyer. And I suppose this somewhat confirms because it's always been the debate about whether the Netflix Daredevil and Punisher, that universe, was part of the MCU, and it was certainly the MCU was alluded to in those series. I
And
guess.
actually, no, it doesn't quite.
Yeah.
Because I think it has come out in other,
But yeah,
like,
but
well,
again, it could be the
it's
same
come
thing as
out in like interviews, and
yeah,
that the Netflix is still it's a Marvel universe, but it's not the MCU.
the not yeah.
Especially since
But as we've had the same actor playing Jameson though in two different.
yeah,
Now we've got Charlie Cox as Daredevil, and
and
thank God you picked Charlie Cox and not fucking Ben Affleck for this.
yeah,
Thank God, you know.
um, and it's also pretty, like, it's almost confirmed in She-Hulk that it's not like
Mm.
the MCU Matt Murdock is not the same as the Netflix Matt Murdock,
Yeah,
since he got his suit from the Taylor character in that series.
and let's probably be honest. Disney ain't going to want to touch that really dark stuff that the Netflix did with those series. You know,
I
I,
mean,
I,
at least at least they have it on the streaming service.
yeah, but I can't imagine they want to go. I can't imagine they want to do like if any sort of more content with the Punisher that's on along the same lines as the
Yeah.
first two series. Anyway, I'd be very surprised.
So, and this bit of the conversation is bringing up like something that's great about this phase of the MCU, but also something that's terrible about this phase of the MCU. Because now we're getting to the point where everything's interconnected enough that you do kind of have to reference other materials to get the whole picture.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, as a fan of comic books, it gives the MCU it's a comic book universe feel that's been kind of lacking in the earlier phases.
I think it definitely has gotten more to that feel now.
Like
And
it's evolved past, oh, we're just doing, sci-fi action movies with people in funny tights, to no, this is a comic book universe.
yeah.
and we're leaning into the comic book feel of it. Now, unfortunately, as comic book universes develop, you do have the problem of canon creep, where
we know that's coming.
Where it's harder to get in, right? It's harder for new fans to get in because they get kind of lost in the sauce and aren't sure where they should begin, and it becomes kind of a what do I watch mess.
Yeah.
So, like, does this mean that we're due for a reset at the end of this phase? I don't think so. They're probably going to let the canon creep continue for a few more decades before they do like some kind of big reset event.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if we take comic book history as a template, it's usually not until like a few iterations after multiverses are introduced before everything gets so out of control that the big reset button has to be hit.
I mean, I don't know. I feel I could see it coming in about 10 years or so.
Yeah.
I could see it coming then.
Yeah, like maybe not at the end of this phase, maybe at the next phase, because we know this phase is the phase that they're going to be like bringing the X-Men in, and X-Men and the mutants in, because they've already started doing that.
Yeah, I think it is going to come to a point, isn't it, where it is going to come. It's inevitably going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, even with some of these, I mean, like I said, it'll happen when they'll have the big reset and
yeah. But speaking of resets, this movie does kind of.
I was thinking that in the back of my mind. Just
does kind of act as a bit of a big reset, at least in terms of Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And we're going to get further into that because over the course of this movie, it is very much a like Peter's character development is Peter growing from Iron Spider Jr. to Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we have a fun little scene where Matt Murdock is Peter Parker's lawyer, and explaining that none of the charges that they have against him are really going to stick, but Happy's in trouble because they're looking at Stark inventory now.
He's going to need a very good lawyer.
And we get our first good. Now, I'm going to bring this up several times because, like, one of the things I have to say about No Way Home in regards to other Spider-Man media is, well, other live action Spider-Man media is, this has the best visible depictions of Peter's spider sense that I've seen put to film.
Yeah.
Mostly here it's done with, you don't really get the nice camera tricks that we get later in the movie. But in this scene, we see a look of realization on Peter's face, and he's reaching out at the same time as Matt, who catches a brick that was thrown through the window that says Mysterio was right, printed on it. And Peter asks Matt, how he did that, and Matt replies with, "I'm a really good lawyer."
Yeah. That was I gotta admit, I do remember that from the first time I watched that, and I do remember popping a bit for that Matt Murdock scene.
Now, I'd be willing to label that the Matt Murdock cameo as fan service.
Yeah,
because all it really does is confirm that Matt Murdock, is in the MCU and he is already Daredevil.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not an important plot point that he's there.
Yeah.
Really. That is fan service. It's not. Perhaps I should have been a bit clearer about what I was like you said, fan service. What I used the term earlier probably wasn't the right word, but
yeah.
like I said, but yeah, but that was definitely more fan service in the way you were describing it, because it's not essential to the plot that Matt Murdock's there in any way, shape, or form. But it is, as a fan, yeah, as a fan, it was good to see. It was good to see him on camera. You know.
Yeah. And particularly, Charlie Cox, who we can both agree
Yeah.
was a much better Matt
I'll tell
Murdock
you what.
than Ben Affleck.
I'll tell you what. That now, if they had used Ben Affleck for that little fucking scene, then this movie, just for that alone, this movie would have universally got banned.
Well,
because
to be fair, I don't think Disney, could have had Affleck in that scene, because I think he was still under contract with Warner Brothers for Batman.
But I think that they know that they would have got wrote if they introduced Ben Affleck's version of Daredevil.
Yeah.
I mean, and hey, it was less said about that. Probably a movie I'm going to assume we're not likely to be covering on Media Musings anytime soon.
Though that being said, I will say that, like Colin Firth as Bullseye is just a treat to watch, and up until William D'Onofrio showed up in the Daredevil series, Michael Clark Duncan was the best Kingpin put to screen.
Yeah, because let's face it, John Rhys Davies was shit. But
I'll be right back. So
okay, so try and move it. I'll move it along a little bit then. So we're kind of getting to the point now where they're dealing with the publicity, and even though the charges against Peter and MJ and they don't stick, that they now can't go. They can't go anywhere. Like they go to school and it's a big media circus, and fucking Flash Thompson decides to put a fucking book out about how he's best friends with Spider-Man. Read it in my new book, Flashpoint. But it gets to the point where they're all applying to their colleges, and their big one, MIT in Boston. That's their their college, all of their college of choice. But they get rejected because of the publicity, and that they pretty much get rejected, not just by MIT, but pretty much every fucking university in America.
Yeah, well, all of their,
everyone they applied to anyway.
And we do have a montage of the rejections coming in. And, Peter is, it's okay, it was a backup school. It's okay, it was a backup school. And then the MIT one arrives, and, he gets together with his friends. They all have their envelopes.
I would have laughed if there'd been one who'd been rejecting them from Patriot Bible College.
Yeah. And they're all rejected because, of the controversy around Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And because, the Halloween decorations are still up, Peter looks at him, looks at the witch lights, and he has a very Peter idea.
Yeah. Again, and I do, we'll get. I know I'm going to say I'm putting a pin in it. Okay. I was about to say something, but I thought put a pin in it because it's like a lot of Peter's, very well intentioned, but not thought through very well. Not necessarily thought through very well, or not even necessarily like what actually would have been a much more obvious and more sensible thing to have done.
Yeah. So he goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum to see Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
And we have a fun little scene where we learn that because of the blip and a technicality and in sorcerer law, Strange is no longer the Sorcerer Supreme, and in fact Wong is.
Yeah.
Which actually I think is a pretty good move, because it lets Doctor Strange do the superhero thing while keeping while Wong is doing the actual business of being the Sorcerer Supreme.
I think as well, probably, and I haven't seen Multiverse of Madness yet, so you bet just to let you know. But I'm just assuming, obviously, to not have him as Sorcerer Supreme to me feels like, because I still feel there needs to be a little bit of character growth with Strange before he should be doing that in a way. So maybe that's a good little device to in some way I'm just speculating this as I haven't seen the latest film. I don't know. My speculation was, okay, he's still kind of, in a way, as a character, got to earn the right to hold that title, I think.
You definitely need to see Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, okay. I'll try and read it this week,
especially knowing how you feel about the Evil Dead. Because I haven't seen any of the Evil Dead movies, and I could tell that that Multiverse of Madness was Sam Raimi's love letter to the Evil Dead.
Okay.
Did I just sell you on it?
Not really. I am gonna watch it. Just because of the fact that I do know that Patrick Stewart shows up as Professor X in it, and that's the only reason I'm gonna. I do want to watch it. I do want to watch it for that alone.
That scene. Oh, those scenes. I'm not gonna spoil.
Don't. I have deliberately. If I've deliberately not watched any clips of it on YouTube or anything, I just know that happens. So
the only thing I will say is there's a brilliant music sting when you first see his wheelchair. A bit of the X-Men animated series theme.
Oh no! Ring! Don't! You're giving me a hard on.
Yeah.
Sorry. Don't. Yeah. Stop.
Just the first few strands.
Stop. I'm or I'm gonna have to disappear for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So Peter goes and says, "Hey, my friends can't get into college because everyone knows, because I was framed and everyone knows I was Spider-Man. So can you go back in time and make it so that Mysterio never revealed my identity?" And of course, Doctor Strange says, "I can't do that anymore. I don't have the time stone." And then,
"Hey, native atheist."
Yep.
Right.
And then, Wong makes a couple like offhands, off the cuff mentions like remembering to do something, which gives Strange a very Doctor Strange idea.
Yeah. So this is what I mean. This is what I'm. This is what I mean. That I still think Doctor Strange has a little bit of growth in his own right, because this ain't a fucking good idea to go along with this. This is not
Yeah.
a fucking good idea. Yeah.
Where he'll just erase the fact that Peter Parker is Spider-Man from everyone's mind.
Mm.
And we do get a fun little joke about how he's cast that spell for smaller things before. And apparently it's a really dangerous spell because it works on the edges of the fabric of the universe.
Yeah.
And so we get the sense that this is very high level, dangerous, universe warping, reality warping magic that Doctor Strange's had been casually doing for much, to cover up big orgy parties that he had.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we go in, he starts casting the spell, and Peter...
Yeah, some sort of dawns on Peter what this means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Peter wants to fix the problem, but he doesn't want to have to go through the pain of having to hide his identity, from those he cares about.
Yeah.
And Doctor Strange does make a very valid point that it's, Peter trying to live the double life that is screwing him over.
Yeah.
Especially in the MCU where anonymous heroes aren't as much of a thing.
No.
But given that he's been, essentially made into the conspiracy theorist punching bag by Alex Jones, like he doesn't really have much of a choice but to live a double life.
Yeah.
And like the more and more I'm talking about this, the more and more like appropriate it feels that we're doing this at the beginning of Prime Month.
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize, watching it the first time, and obviously I didn't realize watching it through, in the pre-show, but you can very much take a queer lens. Like you can very easily read Spider-Man No Way Home through a queer lens. But anyways, Peter screws up the spell by asking for too many exceptions to it.
Yeah.
Instead of honestly, he probably should have asked for everyone to forget Mysterio.
Yeah.
That would have fixed it. But then, Peter's just a kid, and Doctor Strange is an arrogant prick who thinks he knows best.
Yeah.
Like a lot of I've seen a lot of backlash on this plot point, saying it's out of character and it's just done for the service of plot, and in my opinion it's not.
No, not at all. No, because this is Yeah, this is the the yeah, this is the sort of thing Doctor Strange is arrogant enough to fucking do. I'm sorry,
Well,
and this
and
is
this is the thing that especially high school age Peter Parker is naive enough to ask for.
yeah, yeah. So
and and once again, the this entire Peter's entire character arc in this movie is his growth from being, from riding on Tony's coattails, from being
yeah,
Tony's child soldier into coming into his own as Spider-Man proper.
yeah,
So, anyways, the spell gets screwed up and Doctor Strange contains it before it can, ruin everything.
yeah.
And
This is this is what was I said. Thing to put a pin in. Doctor Strange actually makes a decent suggestion. Says, "Why don't you just actually go and talk to people at like MIT?"
well,
Yeah, or
well, he doesn't quite make the suggestion. He's like, okay, I'm sorry we failed, but I mean, you got the rejection. You pleaded your case, and Peter's like,
it's like,
you can do that.
yeah, oh yeah,
And
that's
that's when
classic.
and that's when Doctor Strange was like, oh yeah,
Yeah, I'll just say,
Peter Parker's still a kid.
I'll just say that one thing I did enjoy about this whole scene, the dialogue between Strange and Peter Parker was fucking
Yeah.
funny as fuck during this whole exchange.
And,
Peter,
well,
we saved the universe together. You don't have to call me sir. He says, okay, Stephen. No, that feels weird.
no, it feels weird, but I'll allow it.
I'll allow it.
And that, like, it's also very telling, like, for who Peter and who Parker and Strange are as characters, because after that fuck up, Doctor
Yeah.
Strange is like, Peter's like, no, look, Steven is like, no, you call me sir.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, and so, and ironically, the only one coming up roses, like, during this whole debacle is someone we haven't quite mentioned yet. But I feel that it should quite get a mention, because especially here, because he's who Peter reaches out to for help. Flash Thompson.
I briefly mentioned him.
Yeah.
Flashpoint. Write a book, Flashpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where he's been milking the controversy for popularity and money. And he actually got into MIT.
Yeah. Which is like, how? but yeah,
and
yeah. I mean, with Flash is opposite. I think in cinema we've only seen like the dickish side of Flash. He can be. I mean, in the comics, I know he has his moments where he can be a good guy, but we've only really seen the dickish side of him, I think, in movies.
And I mean, at least this Flash Thompson is a little more. Also, I like the whole, I like the whole dichotomy of he's
bullying,
more than just, he's bullying Peter, but he loves Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But he's a total Spider-Man fanboy. But
yeah, that's I think I know it's not in this movie, but I think one of my favorite little lines was we're it was in the previous film when they're flying to Europe and Flash is trying to get served alcohol, trying to get served alcohol on the flight,
Yeah.
and then MJ said, "Oh, by the way, he blipped, so he's still technically only like 16 years old."
Yeah.
Fucking brilliant.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that the blip, keeps it does have, consequences going forward into further phases of the MCU, because it feels
Absolutely, yeah.
like it feels like, Infinity War and Endgame really did have lasting consequences, unlike most of the final battles of most Marvel movies.
Mm.
Doctor Strange aside, because that was specifically shown as being reversed out of existence.
Yeah.
But anyways, Peter learns who he needs to talk to, and also learns that she had already left the new student mixer to try and get to the airport.
Mm.
And this might just be like me being from a Western state, but why would you, and like not really understanding East Coast traffic yet, but why would you go to the airport to get a flight to Boston when it's probably only a couple hour drive?
Yeah. I don't know. I'll just say I've never been to that part of the United States. I couldn't tell you. I'll just say if New York traffic's anything like fucking London, it's going to take more. Yeah, I can see the appeal of flying.
But
I'll put it this way. Like, I live approximately. If I get a clear run on a decent day of traffic, I can probably get to the outskirts of London from my house in about an hour, and that's like 65, 70 miles. To get into the centre of London, which is another 5 miles or so, will take you another fucking hour.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Hold on, I'm just gonna Google this real quick. So New York.
But
yeah. Okay, yeah. So depending on so it's about like a 4-hour drive.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I could see. Yeah. It could be 45 minutes on a plane. I can see that then. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So like an hour on a plane. 4-hour drive.
Yeah. Although a flight does entail all that getting through and anyway. That's
yeah.
It's just it's a side issue,
but anyways, stupid nitpick.
Yeah.
Peter shows up on the bridge, and we get our first and probably best introduction of the movie.
Oh yeah. Dr. Otto Octavius.
Yeah. and so this is where we kind of begin, like, leaving the conversation of of where the film leaves the discussion of what's it like to be at the center of a storm of a catastrophic storm of controversy, and where we kind of begin to enter the discussion of who these characters mean as people and as archetypes, and also it starts a little bit later, but where we start getting into the themes of reparative versus punitive justice.
Yeah, like restorative and reparative forms of so I think, okay, jumping ahead a little bit, but again, this 2-year-old movie, whatever, spoilers, they all seem to be taken from their respective universes sort of just very shortly before their final battle, during their final battle with Spider-Man, where they eventually die. That's kind of what happens with all these guys.
And that and
the exception of Sandman, who does live, of course, doesn't he? But
but he just wants to go back home so he can see his daughter.
Yeah.
But actually, because this is also where the big where we get the conflict with Spider-Man and Strange, and I have a lot to say about that scene. Because like I will say it, like I'll say it now, and I'll definitely say it again over the course of this stream, but Spider-Man No Way Home is the most Spider-Man Tom Holland has been ever. But anyways, so we have a pretty fun fight with Dr. Octopus, where he's looking for his fusion reactor. And of course, because this isn't Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, Peter Parker doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
The
fight's great. The fight itself is great. But I thought the little punchline with the nanotechnology at the end, how that because let's be honest, until that happened, let's be honest, Dr. Octopus was kicking the fuck out of Spider-Man throughout this entire fight.
Yeah,
absolutely, because of course, obviously, Peter's obviously trying to save people and fight this guy at the same time, but he's not. It's like he's not any like exchange in this one. You just feel like a straight up fight here. You feel like Dr. Octopus is just gonna beat the fuck out of him, and it's just what happens.
But then his tentacles integrate the nanotech, and the AI in Iron Spider's suit overrides the AI in the tentacles and puts them under Spider-Man's control.
Yeah, I just thought that was I just thought that was the best way. I just thought it was like almost the It was a self-owned by Doc Ock, really, wasn't
Yeah.
it, in the end?
And ironically, this had shown, this more than Peter's, unrehearsed babbling to the admissions lady, or to the vice chair lady,
Yeah.
is what actually convinced her to speak to admissions, because she saw that he was a hero.
Yeah. We
And,
saved her. We saved her, So
yeah.
and that, yeah.
And also, like, a nice little fun visual touch that, at the beginning of this scene, when we see her in their car, she's reading Flashpoint.
Yeah, I gotta say this. I gotta say this. The bits of humor in this is probably one of my favorite things about the MCU. Is the
Yeah.
humor in it? I think it is. You know, where it's like, I just think it's one of my favorite things, and it's just one of my favorite things about the MCU as a whole.
And
It's just like,
and I will say that Spider-Man No Way Home is probably the best counterexample to people who bitch about MCU movies being too lighthearted and quippy, because
no, this is not.
No Way Home is like, No Way Home has a lot of comedic moments, especially in the first bit.
Yeah.
But it's not afraid to get very heavy and very dark, and we're gonna get there.
Yeah. Put a pin in it.
Yeah.
I tried to break the record today.
Yeah.
I still don't think we're anywhere near it.
Yeah. So, anyways, with the fight over, we hear a very familiar laugh, and
one of the greatest villains in all comic book movies.
Yeah.
If not, we could argue over the greatest, whether it's Heath Ledger's Joker or but whatever.
Yeah.
But William Dafoe's Green Goblin has got to be in the conversation for the greatest comic book movie villain ever.
Yeah.
He's got to be in the conversation for it, at least.
Yeah, I like, off the top of my head, I'd probably have to say, like, in no particular order, Heath Ledger's Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, why am I dropping his name?
Then film.
X-Men.
Oh, Magneto. Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen's Magneto.
Yeah, he's again.
And Willem Dafoe's Joker.
Or Green Goblin.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe's.
Oh, to be fair, Willem Dafoe would make a fucking excellent Joker as well. And I know that, I think they've tried to get him to the Joker for one or two things, and it's never worked out. But
I honestly,
he would have made a good Joker back in the day, I think.
Like, he would have made a good Joker back in the day, but now that he's played the Green Goblin, I think people would say that his Joker is too close to his Green Goblin.
Yeah.
And it's always good to have a listener.
I might, just for nostalgia's sake as well, I might throw in Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor as well. But
yeah,
that's just nostalgia for me.
But anyways, before we can get into another epic Spider-Man fight, Peter and Octavius are sling ringed into the Sanctum Sanctorum, where Doctor Strange explains that he had found the lizard in the sewers, and that even though he contained the spell, some people had slipped through.
Yeah.
Because instead of instead of what it was supposed to do, because Peter, screwed up the spell, it was pulling everyone who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man into the MCU.
Into this universe. So, I mean, theoretically, okay, we can put a pin in this. Theoretically, we as the readers of Spider-Man comics are eventually going to get pulled through.
Yeah.
Put a pin in that. But,
that is an interesting question as to whether or not that counts.
Yeah.
Because while we know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, we don't know Peter Parker as an actual person.
Well, okay, yeah.
Like, I think there is like something of a metaphysical difference between knowing, Peter Parker the character is Spider-Man the character, rather than knowing, Peter Parker the guy who lives in the next door apartment is also your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man who saved you from muggers.
Yeah. I think we should probably not get down that route too, because I'm not pretending that. I think there's actual philosophers who'd have fucking trouble with this shit.
Yeah. Now that would be an interesting discussion to have if we actually had anyone who knew philosophy.
Maybe I'll reach out to Joe and Trolley Dave or something, and from Answers and Reason, and maybe get them to have a debate on the existential nature of Spider-Man.
The existential nature of knowing that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Yeah, that would make good content, but we don't have the philosophical chops to cover it. So we're going to acknowledge this moment and wave at it.
I'm just saying, I might know some people who could possibly have that discussion, but so
I think Surus might be able to have,
Surus or Ocean, those guys could probably handle that conversation.
I maybe be willing to get into it if Chaos was on the stream, but
actually, Chaos could probably do this. Actually, but whether Chaos wants to do it or not is another fucking matter.
Yeah, but so we're gonna have to just say, I love these moments. I like to wave at them as they pass by. But
I'm just gonna. You hold the fort for a couple of minutes, Ring. I'll just need that. And by the way, just to set the record straight, I have not got Professor X on my mind. Just so people know. All right. See you in 2 minutes. All right.
Yeah. So, and of course, we all know that that's a lie. He definitely has like Professor Xavier on his mind, just thinking about Patrick Stewart right now. So, anyways, Doctor Strange, tells them of the problem, tells Peter of the problem and says, hey, you need to get these guys rounded up so I can, tinker with the spell and send them all back home before the boundaries between our universes crumble and, bad things happen. Our universe is erased as is. And so this starts kind of what I'd like to describe as an interlude between the first and second acts, where Peter gets, MJ and Ned to help him, track down the villains that have, slipped into this universe. And we do have a very fun exchange between MJ and Doctor Strange, where Doctor Strange, in his arrogance, just tells them to Scooby-Doo this shit. And MJ rightfully points out that he has responsibility in this too, because he was the one who cast the spell, and that words like please and thank you exist. So he relents. Probably the only person, one of the few people I have seen in the MCU to actually get Doctor Strange to back down on something. And, he relents and says, Scooby-Doo this shit, please. And, Noodle's a bit under the weather, so they're not gonna be they're not here this week. And we learn that we do get a hint that the villains who have been pulled into this universe are very much still acting according to character, because there's mention that a flying monster raided a military base earlier. Yeah. Yep. Like I said, one of the things that makes this movie great is the little moments, and once again, as much as the MCU gets lambasted for being all cheers and quips and no heavy material, like this movie is a very great example of that. But it's because this movie does get very, very dark and very existential later on. But so anyways, we have Peter go and to a power station out in the middle of nowhere, where he encounters both Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Sandman from Spider-Man 3. And of course, Sandman, having been redeemed at the end of Spider-Man 3, is acting as something of an Oh, you're back.
I'm back, yeah. So I'll make sure I listen in whilst I'm away on the phone, though, so I can keep track of somewhat of the conversation. So we've got to a bit where he's just met Electro, and Sandman's about to appear as well.
Yeah. Though technically we do see Sandman first if you're paying close attention.
Yeah. Hands up, I wasn't.
Yeah. Well, because in some of the establishing shots, you see the ground moving unnaturally.
Should have been a clue.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of clue that Sandman's there. And and this is another example of what I meant at the beginning about how No Way Home is more of a character study than just a fan service fest that, you know, that you had kind of dismissed it as.
Yeah, I think more poor choice of words on my it's fan service. It wasn't meaningless fan service. I probably should have been a bit more specific in what I was meaning.
You know, and like especially watching the villains, you know, bounce off each other, and later the Peters bounce off each other, you get a feeling for what made each adaptation unique. And the explorations of the theming of the various franchises done within, you know, the context of a Spider-Man movie, which is which is a very meta concept without any actual meta commentary in this, you know, in the text of the film itself.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like for instance, you know, we have, you know, the Flint Marko from, you know, Spider-Man 3, who was, you know, turned into a sand monster by a science experiment, and he just wants to see his daughter, you know.
Yeah.
Like that's all he cares about. He just wants to get home, but he was screwed over by the system, so he doesn't really trust anyone. And meanwhile, we have, you know, introduced at the same time, we have Electro, who was a nobody, you know, until, you know, the accident with the electric eels that, you know, because everything was, you know, like aside from the Rhino, everything in the Amazing Spider-Man is, you know, genetic engineering.
Yeah, it's essentially an electric eel version of Spider-Man in a sense, you know.
Yeah, and you know, and his power made him not a nobody anymore. And how, you know, given how the electricity is, you know, in this universe is powered by the arc reactor, you know, Stark Tech, he likes, you know, he likes this extra power, and he likes how his power has no longer made him a nobody, and how he can take the admiration that he feels that he deserves.
Yeah.
And actually, like a lot of, like, you know, for the most part, most of the villains, with the exception of the Lizard, are basically foils against each other. And each pair of villain foils are introduced together.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Doc Ock and
the Goblin
are very much, you know, foils to each other.
Yeah.
As are, you know, as are Electro and Sandman, and the Lizard's just kind of there.
Yeah, he's
like,
he's maybe the only one. He's maybe the only villain that might have been done a little bit of a disservice in this movie, possibly. But it still wasn't was still okay. He was still an okay character to have in this. You know, it was.
And I mean, like honestly, I feel that he like because for those who shit on the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, the Amazing Spider-Man one was pretty good, and it even though it's been a while since I've seen it, it did feel like Connors did get something, did get a character arc in that movie,
Yeah,
and he, and Kurt Connors as the Lizard doesn't really have anything to bring to the discussion of, what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man.
yeah,
Because, we have,
I mean, I think like the animated series in the 1990s is probably one of the best bits of justice I've seen to the character of the Lizard that's been done, in my opinion.
But because the Green Goblin's, the Green Goblin shows up in the next scene.
Yeah.
Where we think that Norman has, finally done away with the Green Goblin persona.
You feel like he's. I mean, you do, and I think he is genuinely trying to fight the Goblin. I genuinely get that feeling about him, but it's always a losing battle, I think.
Yeah, and like arguably, it's hard to say when he loses that battle, because did he really did he really even temporarily win that battle, or did the Goblin decided to bide his time?
Yeah, and that's kind of, and that's almost what I feel happened here, is that the Goblin was happy to remain dormant for a little while until the right moment.
And so Norman shows up at Aunt May's charity.
Yeah, the feast.
Yeah,
like that.
Which is something from the modern comics. Yeah. Where
means food, emergency aid, shelter, and training is what it means. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a homeless shelter soup kitchen kind of setup. Where, and we see Norman's in really rough shape, because just the mental toll of realizing he is not he's not where he belongs.
Mm.
And
I love the whole thing of this, where he gets the phone, where Peter gets the phone call from May, and he's running in there because he's so afraid of what's going to happen. And just to find Norman sat there, and May, he sort of sat there looking almost look a bit of a pathetic figure, but he's broken, and it's May who's giving him a cup of coffee and put her arm around him and comforting him.
Yeah, and giving him a donut.
Yeah.
And that, and May, is the one who kind of guides Peter into the idea that these people need help.
Yeah.
Because especially up until the MCU, like the villains of Spider-Man, of the live action Spider-Man franchises, have essentially just been broken people, which, kind of says something about the earlier, renditions.
Yeah.
But
I mean, and the only one of them. Well, I mean, I suppose you could say Sandman gets a little bit of redemption in the end of Spider-Man 3, but Doctor Octopus at the end of Spider-Man 2, where that whole line, "I will not die a monster,"
yeah,
um,
he finally wrestles his way out of his brokenness and dies as a tragic anti-hero of some sorts. But and Spider-Man No Way Home plays with this, with these presentation of Spider-Man's rogues gallery as, fundamentally broken people. And, and presents the case, and uses that as the leverage of reparative versus punitive justice.
Yeah.
Because we learn, that this is where we're taking that pin out. We learn that, with the exception of Sandman, every single one of them were taken just before they died fighting Spider-Man. And Peter can't consciously accept the fact that he would be sending them to their death.
Yeah.
And this is where we get into one of my favorite scenes of the movie.
The fucking Inception montage.
Where Peter and Doctor Strange's conflict of belief really comes to a head.
Yeah.
And
with Doctor Strange, it's like, this is fate,
Doctor Strange is like, this is, can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. This is the fate of the multiverse we're talking about. A few lives aren't gonna matter.
Yeah, we know which way Doctor Strange is going to go with the trolley problem here.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Spider-Man is saying, no, all lives matter. But not in the
right-wing fucking right-wing dog whistle sense. No. I mean, yes, listen, I'll just get this that way. Of course all lives matter. We're not saying, but for fuck's sake, sorry. I just hate the way that they.
Yeah. No, yeah, he's not saying all lives matter in a way to dismiss. He's saying, no, we have a duty to make sure that they at least get a chance to change their ways and survive.
Yeah.
And so, so he takes the magic go away box from Doctor Strange, and there's first we have a bit of a scuffle in the out in the main street, where we get one of the better, the second great depiction of Peter Parker's spider sense working, where Doctor Strange does his astral punch and tries to grab the box away, but Peter's body is just reacting without any input from his conscious mind.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That is fantastic. I thought I noticed this in a couple of the Doctor Strange movies. It's like I almost feel like it's the fight scenes in those that in like the first Doctor Strange movie and this little thing that's about to come out here. They seem to be a love letter to that movie Inception.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the mirror dimension does feel like
It's like it's Inception, you know.
Yeah. But why I love the scene in the mirror dimension isn't just because of the visuals, because
I'm going
like
to
I
say
said,
the actual visuals are a bit of a mind fuck for me. I struggle with them.
But it's also because it's one of the best Spider-Man moments put to film. Because we have a bit of a back and forth fight where, you know, Doctor Strange and Peter are, you know, taking the box from each other, and the landscape is shifting and changing around them, and the mirrors crash into each other and starts going all, you know, polyhedral, like kaleidoscopy. And Peter realizes this dimension is just runoff geometry. This is math, and he's good at math.
Yeah, that's a very acute observation, Ring.
Yeah.
I'll show myself out, shall I?
Yeah. But, you know, so you know, Doctor Strange is thinking he's won because Peter starts just webbing things randomly, you know, apparently randomly. And he was like, I'll let you back out when this is done. And then he's all caught up in web because Peter, you know, figured out the geometry and shot his webs around to where they'd catch him, because this dimension is, you know, run off math and angles. And like, there's a lot that you can, you know, there's a lot of positive things that can be said about previous Spider-Man media. But previous live action Spider-Man media does a bit of disservice to Peter Parker's actual intelligence.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, this scene right here is where that intelligence, you know, shines through. It's where we get to know that Peter doesn't just bring the powers he got from a spider bite into the scenario. He's also got, you know, an intelligent mind that can, you know, problem solve with science and math. And because Spider-Man isn't like as reliant on sciences and gadgets as, say, you know, say Reed Richards or Hank Pym or, you know, Tony Stark, does kind of get underwritten. It does kind of get ignored that he's one of the more intelligent, you know, people in the Marvel universe.
Yeah. We don't often. Yeah, I do same thing. I did appreciate that we got to actually to show that side, but as you know, in the moment as he's Spider-Man, it's like, you know, because you know, they might have little side things or whatever where he's sort of putting something together, which or something that's a bit to do with science, but doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with what's then going to happen when he's as Spider-Man, you know?
Yeah.
That's
like meanwhile in this scene, and this is why I love this scene, is he beats Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, not by out fighting him, but by out thinking him.
Yeah, and he's done it and he's doing it in Doctor Strange's own domain as well,
own turf, because
this is his own turf. This is where this is where theoretically Spider-Man shouldn't have a fucking chance here.
Yeah. And of course, Spider-Man takes the box and the sling ring. And Doctor Strange disappeared. And also, thematically, this scene is great because, in a meta sense, this is where Spider-Man is taking the plot of the movie from Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Because up until this point, up until the point from where Doctor Strange tried to cast the spell until now, Doctor Strange has been calling the shots. He's been sending Spider-Man out as an errand boy to clean up the mess they made.
Spider-Man was a sidekick up until this point, essentially. Yeah. He was the teenage sidekick up until this point in the movie.
And at this point in the movie, Spider-Man literally takes the plot of the movie from Doctor Strange and leaves Doctor Strange hanging over the Grand Canyon for 12 hours.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. Now, okay, so we move this along. So he kind of has left Doctor Strange trapped here. And I'm trying to remember where we go. So he goes back, and obviously, he's gonna work. He's going to work on trying to essentially save the villains here and help them out. And he takes them to Happy's apartment, which is where he may have been, where he's still got the some of like the Stark technology there. So he starts to sort of work on curing them, and he actually, I think, so we're back. I just moved it along to the bit where they're going to like Happy's apartment he's going to Happy's apartment with the villains, and starting to work on curing them. That's as far as I got.
Yeah, because he basically says, hey, the wizard's gonna be back, and he's gonna send you home whether you have a chance or not. I'm gonna try and make sure that you have a chance.
Yeah.
And and this is really where the discussion of reparative versus punitive justice comes into play.
Yeah.
And where because first is Otto Octavius, who's fighting it the whole way, but he's not really the one fighting it. It's
it's really Norman or the Goblin that's really fighting it, though, isn't it?
No, I mean, because yes, Doc Ock is resisting, the chip being, reinstalled, but it's not really him that's doing the resisting. It's the AI that's controlling the tentacles.
Oh, yeah.
that are trying to keep their control over him. And when the inhibitor chip is reemplaced, the voices in his head go quiet, and he starts helping.
Yeah.
And like I feel that there is a semi-valid point, that Max Dillon does make a semi-valid point that, in their, in Peter's efforts to, cure their fix what made them broken, he is somewhat neutering them. But in terms of Dr. Octopus, that doesn't really apply.
No. I mean, there's Octavius is a very, the man's a genius.
Yeah.
The man is a genius. And I'd say even really with Norman Osborn, it doesn't apply either in a sense, because I mean, look, before he became the Goblin, Norman was also a scientific genius and a highly successful businessman.
And I mean, Octavius still has his arms.
Yeah,
He's just in control of them. Basically,
he could put them to good use.
Yeah, basically, instead, like, reinstalling the inhibitor chip just brings him to the point of his redemption at the end of Spider-Man 2 without him having to die.
Yeah.
And arguably, I'd say that Max Dillon or Electro wasn't fixed when when the energy was drained out of him. He was fixed when him and Andrew Garfield had their little chat afterwards.
Yeah.
But that being said, Max Dillon was so blinded by power that to get through to him, he had to have, like, he had like, to be able to reach him on a human level, you had to reduce him to a human level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand that, but I also understand why Max would view like that whole thing would view it as being neutered, because he's the guy who felt like a nobody.
Yeah.
Like I said, but some of the other guys in this, I mean, to be honest, if you look at this cast of villains, you could maybe only really argue that that whole thing about being neutered may only really honestly apply to him and maybe Sandman. I don't think it applies to. I mean, Kurt Connors again.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he again highly intelligent man.
And like, actually, I'd even go so far as to say that it only really applies to Max Dillon, because remember, the villains are, like, with the exception of the Lizard, the villains that are the foils to each other, thematically speaking, are introduced in pairs.
Yeah.
We have, Doc Ock and Green Goblin introduced at the bridge scene. And then we have Sandman and Electro introduced, in the fight in the woods. And, Max Dillon sees it as, him getting neutered. Sandman kind of views his powers as a curse. He out of all of them, he just wants to, go home.
Yeah.
Like he's never really been antithetical to Spider-Man's mission. He just didn't like the fact that it was keeping him here.
Yeah.
And he got kind of manipulated into lashing out against him.
Mm.
Because, the system screwed him over because he spent years of his life at the hands of punitive justice.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't trust that Peter's reparative justice approach is actually going to help.
Yeah.
Because all he knows is how the system of punitive justice has failed him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do think this is a great underlying theme of this movie because it's such a great it's such a great debate between in the real world between punitive justice and reparative or restorative justice.
Yeah.
And it's I'd say definitely that I'm someone who leans towards reparative and restorative justice, generally speaking, but but I don't think it's an and or I think it's more complex than it's a more complex thing. I think
Yeah.
when you look at it with particular cases or whatever.
So since we are kind of getting into it, should we skip the introduction of the other Peters and just get into the final fight? Or
I do kind of think we need to kind of probably because we teased about how dark this movie gets. We do need to talk about what we cannot ignore what's about to happen.
And also, we have to acknowledge the best depiction of Peter's spider sense that's ever been put to film. So, Peter's making progress. He's got Doc Ock fixed, and he's got a device on, Max Dillon that's siphoning off the extra electricity. And like he tries to mansplain. Well, it's not technically mansplaining because they're both men. But he does kind of try to mansplain how the device works to the electrical scientist.
Yeah. And then kind of realizes what he's doing. I think at one point, wasn't it? I don't need to tell you how electricity works.
Yeah. And but then we get like a bit of I think it's called the Dutch zoom or the dolly zoom.
Yeah.
Where we get the the zoom in effect on just Peter, and everything gets like all kind of Dutch tilty around him because he realizes that something's off.
Yeah.
And he's, walking around the apartment just trying to figure out what's, why
something's wrong, but yeah.
And, this is as, Electro's trying to do his, hey, I should just stay here and, be powerful thing. But then he twigs that it's Norman.
And the goblin has raised his head.
And we get one of the best lines out of of this movie out of Willem Dafoe. That's a neat trick you have, that extra sense.
Yeah.
And basically Norman Osborn's, for those of you who've watched the media musings on Spider-Man 1 or on the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, Norman Osborn's up to his usual tricks as the dark father figure.
Yeah.
Where he's trying to convince Peter that, being the hero is for losers, that he has the power, he should just take what he wants. And this gets into a fight as, the Daily Bugle shows up and calls in damage control to arrest Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And
fuck Joe Jameson in this, by the way. Just fuck him.
And there's a bit of a fight between Spider-Man, Electro, and the Green Goblin as all the other villains escape. We get a great moment of J. Jonah Jameson freaking out as the Lizard busts out of the van.
Yeah.
Because, the Lizard is like, this is just going to all go to shit, and I'm just going to watch it go to shit. And we get the fight goes all the way from whatever floor Happy's apartment's on. Peter tells Aunt May to run, and she has to, and because Max Dillon accidentally took out the power when he stuck himself with the arc reactor instead of the draining device. The elevators aren't working, so she has to take the stairs. Meanwhile, Norman's literally punching Spider-Man through the floor.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I said earlier about the way when Dr. Octopus was introduced and he was beating the shit out of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh god, the Goblin hit Norman is totally physically dominates Spider-Man in this scene.
And I will say, with the raggedy, the purple hoodie and the raggedy cloak, I like the Goblin's character design a lot better in No Way Home than in Spider-Man. I mean, it kind of has its own 2000s iconic nostalgia charm to it.
Yeah,
but
this felt more menacing. I think mainly in a way because you could see Willem Dafoe's face and see what he could do with his facial expressions and that. Because you could see that, I think that added something. That added something to, and I understand why. I mean, like the 2002 thing. I understand why they went that way because if you actually look at the traditional costume of the Green Goblin, it's a bit fucking stupid looking.
Yeah.
If we're going to be honest about it, it's a bit for such a great villain. The costume looks fucking ridiculous, honestly. So I understand why they needed to update it and make it, okay, it's an armor and the Goblin mask is kind of crafted as the extension. The mask, the mask is the character, is the Goblin rather than that pullover thing with the flipping elf hat. I just the green gnome. So I understood why they did that, but I think what they did here, because the one thing, of course, you couldn't get from that mask was Norman's facial expressions, and Willem Dafoe can obviously
Yeah.
do a lot of his facial expressions.
Yeah,
And
like
that's why I think,
Willem Dafoe can really put on a good crazy evil face.
yeah,
And in this fight where he is lambasting Peter about how his mercy is making him weak, and how he gets it from Aunt May, and he straight up murders Aunt May on screen.
yeah. That's why I said we couldn't we can't overlook what happens here, because I think this is such a where you'd say all the funniness and the quippiness of the Marvel movies, they can go to a dark place. The fact we not only we lose Aunt May, but the internal struggle Peter's having as a result of this. And again, we'll get back to it in a minute, but that whole punitive justice versus restorative and reparative justice thing is going to come into it again.
And Peter is really doubting whether Aunt May's way was really the right way, because it just got her killed and it was his fault.
I mean, the thing, what got me about this scene is you sort of she got hit hard and so on, but when she gets up, you're kind of initially thinking, she's just hurt. She's going to be okay. She's going to be okay. And then when you start realizing this is way more serious than.
Yeah, when she collapses back down, it's like, oh.
But the fact then, and I'm going to say this, I know the lines become such a cliche in whatever of the years. I think it's the best use I've ever heard of that famous the Spider-Man line.
Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. Well, and she says the actual original line from the comic is, that with great power there must also come
great responsibility. And but
and this is where the movie really gets into its belly of the whale moment.
Sorry, Ring, can I just ask, am I coming through okay to you? It's just okay, it's just occasionally looks like you're freezing or something, so I'm just trying to figure if there's an internet issue here, but I can hear you fine. But
like maybe on my end, but you're coming in fine.
Okay, cool.
But we get this is where the movie really gets into its belly of the whale moment. Because like, as much as this is Tom Holland's third Spider-Man movie, this is very much like the MCU Spider-Man origin.
Yeah.
Because, as much as, Tom Holland had the name Spider-Man, all the way from Captain America Civil War up through, Infinity War and Endgame.
This is where he's no longer Iron Man Jr. here, though, isn't it?
Yeah, this is where he goes from, Tony Stark's child soldier to, being a hero in his own right.
Yeah.
And and it's fitting that what brings us out of this belly of the beast moment is when we cut back to Ned, who has the sling ring,
and suddenly finds out he can use it.
Yeah. And he tries to, open a portal to Peter.
Yeah.
And we see
He succeeds.
and we see Spider-Man standing in an alleyway.
Yeah.
And he comes through the portal, and it is a Peter Parker, but it's not.
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, it's Andrew Garfield.
I'll get this out of the way now, okay? I'll get this out of the way now. I was not a big fan of the Amazing Spider-Man films.
Yeah.
I put a comment in when we watched this pre-show. I put a comment in there that after a little while of watching this, I was like, Andrew Garfield actually feels like Spider-Man now.
Yeah.
I think he to me felt more like Spider-Man in this movie than he did in the whole two movies that were centered on him.
And this is where we're getting into one of the third or fourth, I lost count, big themes of Spider-Man No Way Home is retroactive justice for the other franchises.
Yeah.
Is bringing the other franchises to a more agreeable and more organic conclusion than, being torpedoed by a bad movie a few years back.
Yeah. Yeah, because obviously the Sam Raimi, it's the third. Let's be honest, the third one, because there almost certainly would have been a Spider-Man 4, but that third one wasn't very. It just was not a good movie.
Oh yeah, and arguably, I think a lot of the Amazing Spider-Man 1 might have been like at least conceptually rescued from the script for Spider-Man 4, because I'm pretty sure Sam Raimi said the villain for Spider-Man 4 was going to be the Lizard.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll just say this. I know that my big thing, I think Spider-Man 3, I felt they just tried to blow their load on bringing in so many different villains and whatever. Yeah. I just felt that none of them really hit home. And if they just done Venom, or they just done Sandman, or they just done like the confrontation with Harry, I think it would have worked. They did too much. I felt they tried to do too much. That was my opinion.
So what I feel like is Spider-Man 3 was originally intended to be the confrontation with Harry and Sandman, because there are thematic mirroring to each other.
Yeah.
I also feel that maybe Venom was going to be, or at least the black suit was going to be introduced. Because that's how we got our introduction to Kurt Connors, he was, analyzing the symbiote suit for Peter. So I think maybe the idea was or the idea for Sam Raimi was, wrap up the arc of, Harry Osborn in Spider-Man 3 and introduce the black suit arc for our next couple movies. But Sony is like, no, we want Venom now.
It's this is a classic thing of Sony. It's called blowing your load, essentially. Yeah. That's what happened there.
But that
blowing your load, but it ends up being an unsatisfying experience.
That being said, the quote unquote multiple villains problem that's supposedly been plaguing the superhero film genre for, since the dawn of time, is shown to only really be a problem if you don't account for it in your script writing. Because, we basically have...
I mean, this is a multiple villains movie we're talking about.
Yeah,
now it
this is...
does help that we've had previous movies to introduce who these guys are. Okay, that helps. But
what really helps is that they give the screen time to the villains that lets them bounce off each other, and we see how they interact with each other.
Yeah.
Which is why, why I hesitate to call, all the scenes with the villains fan service, because it's building, and once again, and I can't believe I only noticed this as we were talking about it, but the film is very specifically structured to have pairs of villains foil off each other, and they introduce those villains at the same time, so to seed the theme into your mind.
Yeah.
But we're gonna put a pin in restoring and on justice for Andrew Garfield. But
yeah.
So Ned tries to get Peter again, and we get Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna say, I even though that the first time I watched it, I knew this was coming. I knew he'd be the next one to walk in. It was still a satisfying moment to see him walk in.
Now, I don't know if it was just me, or did you see this in theaters?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So I can't confirm if it was just me or just my experience or not. But
was there a cheer in the theater?
Oh yeah, when Tobey Maguire walked through that portal, the audience cheered like probably, I don't think I've seen a cheer in the audience like that. Except for maybe when Captain America says "Avengers Assemble" in Endgame.
Yeah, I'm going to say we don't often. I think with British cinemas, you don't often get cheers in British movie theaters. I've maybe known once where it's happened. It was a James Bond film. I think it was Skyfall, and they found for some reason the old Aston Martin DB5 turns up.
Yeah.
And everybody cheered, and everyone. There was a bit of it. There was like, "Yay!"
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got to step out for 2 secs, Ring. Okay.
Okay.
I'll be going to continue to move the stream along.
Yeah. And once again, I present my thesis that having Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in the movie isn't technically just fan service, because not only does it fulfill the thematic nature of restoring and bringing closure to those Spider-Man franchises for the audience. That arguably is a bit fan servicey, because you only really get that closure if you're familiar with the earlier franchises. But these these Peters Parker, these Spiders Man, a little bit of military humor for you, act as a as mentor figures for Peter Parker, because they are more experienced. They've they've had their Aunt May death. They've, Tobey Maguire, had his Uncle Ben. And, Andrew Garfield not only had Uncle Ben, but he also had, his Gwen Stacy moment. And that pin is still in there about Andrew Garfield's justice at the end of this movie. But they, so they come and they help pull Peter slightly out of his grief, up to where he can actually function, because he was about to, he's about to give up and push the villains go home, damn them all to hell button. But the other, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield help convince them to finish the plan, to make the antidotes for for Sandman and Electro and the Green Goblin, and as Andrew Garfield points out, he had already made an antidote to the lizard serum. So we get a fun little montage of them working together in the school lab. Couple of fun back and forth moments. Nothing too thematically important in my opinion. And up through this, up until this point, every so often in the news broadcasts in the background, you keep hearing about this controversy about sticking, Captain America's shield on the Statue of Liberty. Well, so they decide that the final confrontation, because I can talk, I swear, the final confrontation is going to take place at the Statue of Liberty, and it's pointed out that it's thematically important because it's at a place that that symbolizes second chances for the people who have come to this country. And of course,
I'm back.
Okay. Yep.
Sorry, I know you like someone to bounce off of me, so I tried not to be too long.
Yeah. But yeah, I was just bringing us because I don't think. Yeah, like I said, I don't really think there's much too thematically important in the making the fix the villain gadgets in the lab scene.
No, it was like you said, it was a good little montage of them working together, and as I think you pointed out, I mean, in a way, like you said, this was why it's a great study of Peter Parker, Spider-Man as a character. You've got these three different versions of Peter Parker that have gone through a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know it's something that's been done before, obviously, we did with the Spiderverse. And then, do you remember the way I don't know if you remember the storyline that finished the animated series in the 1990s?
No.
But that happened where there was like a thing with all these different Spider-Men.
Starting from 1996. Yeah. I didn't have cable growing up. We just had public channels. So basically,
they had numerous different versions of Spot. There was one who was he he was more like Iron Man. He'd been like really successful and whatever, and he had the Scarlet Spider, and then, but they were all teaming up to fight a version of like another version of Spider-Man who'd been infected with the Carnage symbiote. So it was they're fighting Spider Carnage, and the quick one of the animated series. There's one guy in it. One of the Spider-Men turned out to be an actor who played Spider-Man, and they come into our world where the final conversations between Spider-Man and Stan Lee. So Stan Lee was doing cameos way before the fucking MCU. Okay. My little detour there. So they're on the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. So I will say, though, sorry about that, but I will say the brief calm before the storm where, you know, all the Peters have their like final heart to heart, that is slightly thematically important, because it's where the reparative justice versus punitive justice and the redemption for the previous franchise's themes kind of knit together a little bit.
Yeah.
Where, you know, we have, you know, well, you know, the whole, you've had a web block? Yeah, it was an existential crisis sort of thing.
I do love the fact that the other two are like fascinated with Tobey Maguire's organic web spinning. Whereas the others have, like, you know, the other two they've got the more traditional thing of making the fluid and put it in these cartridges that they strap to their wrist, you know.
And how you know, and we have the scene where, you know, Andrew Garfield's you know, being hard on himself because, you know, you guys fought aliens and all I got was a guy in a mechanical rhino suit, and
I can't get over the fact you fought aliens in space.
Yeah. And, you know, and Peter, or, you know, Tobey Maguire, you know, gets...
He's Peter 2, is that correct?
Yeah.
Is he 2 or 3? He's 2.
I think he's 2. But
I think,
for sake of, you know, convenience, we're going to be referring to them by their actor names.
Yeah, they did in the movie. It's like they all go like, because the MJ and Ned were like Peter, and they're all asked to say, no, Peter Parker. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So they had to eventually just settle on Peter 1, Peter 2, Peter 3.
Yeah, and but, you know, where Toby, you know, has a bit of a heart-to-heart with Andrew, and, you know, tells him that he's an amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah. I did love that. I did like that little line, I must admit.
And so both Flint and Ed Dillon, you know, show up because Flint wants to use the box to get home, and Ed Dillon wants to destroy the box so he can, you know, become a god, essentially. And we learn what this, you know, what Tom Holland actually brings to the table, because up to this point, you know, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire have been very much more mentor figures to Tom Holland. And we realize, you know, we learned that, you know, Tom Holland's the only one who's fought as a member of the team of a team before.
Yeah. So, who should lead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tom Holland takes the lead, and
I did love that thing that neither Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield had a fucking clue who the Avengers were. I just like, what the fuck? What's the Avengers?
Is that like a rock band?
Yeah, that was fucking brilliant.
Yeah. So, and so they decide to go as a team and whittle down the villains one by one.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, even though they did get the box away from the Statue of Liberty via the portal, well, Ned's gotten the hang of opening portals.
Doesn't know how to close them.
Yeah.
And
so
here comes the lizard. There's an old British comedy sketch with a guy called Alexi Sell, and I think one of the things says, "Here comes the lizards. Here comes the lizard." Yeah.
But so basically, because of that, MJ and Ned end up on the Statue of Liberty, and they get Electro and Flint cured. And like I said, Andrew has his heart-to-heart with oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself because we have this great moment with Dr. Octopus.
Yeah, he arrives to help and helps to cure Dylan, doesn't he? So
well, yeah, because they show up and they're like, oh, Dylan's too strong for us to just web the arc reactor away. We're gonna have to get in close and do it.
Yeah.
And he's just blasting him away, each time. And Dr. Octopus shows up and he's like, no, I'll kill them. They're mine.
Yeah.
And spoiler warning for a movie that's been pretty thoroughly spoilered in the public conscience for the last couple of years.
To be honest, you can't moan us as spoilers now, because if you've been watching this for 2.5 hours, you cannot moan about spoilers now.
Yeah. But so Dr. Octopus actually hadn't turned back evil. He had either the inhibitor chip is still working, or the moment of clarity had let him get his mind together enough to be able to resist the AI.
Yeah.
Because, Max Dillon did attempt to fry the inhibitor chip. Maybe Peter put in a surge protector, or maybe Octavius was able to just
his willpower overcame it. We don't know. Because obviously this is the ending of Spider-Man 2. He finally he manages to assert his will back over the AI.
Yeah.
When he essentially makes the sacrifice.
But we learned that the AI hadn't actually regained control. He was just playing the villain so he can pull a sneaky on Electro and stick him with the electricity draining device. And we get another great callback to the nerdy recipe to fry inhibitor chips. Add a small amount of oil to a medium saucepan and heat for 5 minutes. Add the chips and seasoning to taste.
Yeah, you've got to cook it at 66 degrees.
Yeah. But so
that was a bad joke.
We and we get a brief moment that can arguably just be called fan service, but I feel like it's like more a kid that I feel like it's more bringing Otto's arc to its natural turn, into a more happy ending point.
Yeah.
Where he's holding Tony Stark's arc reactor, and he looks at Tobey Maguire and says, "The power of the sun in the palm of my hand." Because that was his big
mission, wasn't it? His big obsession.
And I can see the argument for people calling it fan service. I feel that it's more, like I said, more bringing the arc to a suitable conclusion.
Yeah.
And this is where Doctor Strange finally shows up again. He managed to get himself out of the mirror dimension Grand Canyon. And, he sees that they are, in fact, that the plan is, in fact, working.
Yeah.
But there's one villain left to cure.
Norman Osborn.
Yep.
And this again, this is the ultimate thing of the whole battle between restorative and punitive justice in a way, because it's Norman that killed May.
Yep.
So Tom Holland's Peter Parker. He wants revenge in a sense. He wants that. He wants to punish, but that's the struggle that's about to happen.
Yeah, but before that, MJ gets knocked off the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Tom Holland jumps to save her and gets carried away by the glider.
Yeah.
And so we get the redemption for Andrew Garfield.
Yes, of course, because Gwen Stacy.
Yeah, because they did,
I got a slight confession during the movie. I think I missed this bit. I had to go into the little boy's room, so I missed this moment we were screening earlier.
But so MJ is falling to her death, and Andrew jumps off, catches her, and instead of catching her with the webbing and breaking her back like he did with Gwen Stacy, he catches her and then turns and uses his body to handle the forces, essentially. Basically, we get a repeat of the Gwen Stacy scenario, but Andrew gets to save her.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is really about the whole bringing the other series to a satisfying character conclusion.
It sort of feels, I mean, I do in a way. I think this whole, and because of what I said in the what I said earlier when we were watching this, that how I felt Andrew Garfield felt way more like Spider-Man in this movie. And I did, because I just didn't buy him in that franchise. I did not buy Andrew Garfield at all as Spider-Man. But I completely bought him as Peter Parker, Spider-Man in this.
Yeah.
And yeah, we know there was also, I mean, because I know one of the films that you mentioned was affected by the writer's strike and stuff.
No, I thought Amazing Spider-Man 2 might have been affected by the writer's strike, but it came out too late.
So it's just shit writing.
Yeah, it was just shit writing.
and that happens. That happens.
Basically, they wanted to speed run into the Sinister Six, and
he was done. He was done dirty, really. I think by some bad.
Oh, nerdy.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on.
Moving on.
Yeah.
So,
but I just say, I mean, that happens as well. Like, if anyone's seen the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League,
which I haven't.
I will just say that there's a I will just say there's a 3 or 4 minute moment, 3 or 4 minute scene towards the end of it there. And again, I'm giving away spoilers to something but I'm not going to give away exactly what happens.
Yeah.
But I will say we got Jared Leto's Joker, and that 3 or 4 minutes that he was on screen in that Zack Snyder's cut, you realise how badly he was misused in Suicide Squad. So
on the flight out to the funeral, I actually watched Birds of Prey.
Yeah, what do you reckon?
Good movie. Very.
I love it. I love that movie. I'm glad because I've been definitely singing I think that's like a hidden gem of the DC EU that movie, because it got a lot, and I think it suffered because of Suicide Squad, but I think they really got Harley Quinn right in that movie.
Yeah.
So I think it is the DCEU's answer to Deadpool, that movie.
We get the the showdown between Green Goblin and Tom Holland. And Tom Holland has given into the need for revenge.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I think it was more a combination of him killing Aunt May and also him keeping him from saving MJ.
Yeah.
Because to call back to the bridge scene, what really got Spider-Man fighting was Octavius saying, "I should have killed your little girlfriend when I had the chance."
Yeah.
And so, but Tom Holland has given into the argument of punitive justice rather than
I mean, it may not even be like punitive justice, but that fit well. I mean, I guess again, we can argue here about is punitive justice in itself satisfying a desire for revenge.
Yeah.
That's a whole, again, I think that's a big conversation for another stream.
And also,
it's digging into that need for some kind of like revenge, or that somehow punishing this person, killing this guy, is going to bring you some sort of catharsis.
And honestly, this is like, and even though it's done with Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin, This is the best depiction of the should Batman just kill the Joker argument that I've seen on film.
Yeah.
Because we know that, you know, we know that Norman's just going to keep coming back and making things worse because he wants to see Spider-Man fall.
Yeah.
That was half
That wasn't
decent.
bad. That wasn't bad.
Yeah.
That wasn't bad. That's better than I could do. I'm not even going to attempt it. So yeah. I'll do the remainder of the stream service by not trying to do any Green Goblin impressions.
And you know, and this is where we get Tobey Maguire's redemption.
Yeah.
Because Tom Holland almost gets the Goblin with his glider, but Tobey steps in and takes the blade in place of Osborn.
Yeah.
Which, given all of the Spider-Man is Jesus iconography in the Sam Raimi movies, is actually really fitting that he gets his redemption by laying his life, by taking the blade for his enemy.
Yeah.
Especially in the Spider-Man movies, the one big sin that comes back to bite him is the fact that Norman perished on his own glider.
Yeah.
And
it kind of annoys me. And it kind of annoyed me in Spider-Man 3. Why didn't that fucking butler speak up to Harry a bit sooner? Yeah. A lot of shit could have been avoided.
Yeah. Well, also a lot of shit could have been avoided if Peter had told Harry. And there is a very good discussion to be had about whether or not the Green Goblin's final words in Spider-Man 1 were, him in a final moment of clarity, or if it was just the Goblin doing a last bit of manipulation to ruin Peter's life.
Yeah.
Because, that's the thing about, this depiction of Norman Osborn. It's very hard to tell where Norman ends and the Goblin begins.
Yeah. It is difficult. I'd argue to be honest, if you become that successful with a capitalist to begin with, you've got to be a little bit of a fucking psychopath in the first place.
And
I almost think like the Goblin serum may have exacerbated something that was there in Norman to begin with.
And I mean, that's what it said it did in in Spider-Man. It heightened aggression levels. It didn't induce aggression.
I think it enhanced something that was already there under the surface, that was maybe under control.
Yeah.
But now it's no longer under control. You can't control it anymore.
And because he didn't do enough tests to see if it was a problem with the rats or if it was a problem with the serum, and he just rushed to human testing on himself, that question can't really be answered. Though it does, like the anti-serum that Tobey had cooked up does seem to have at least taken the fight out of him. But
yeah,
you know, it is left in the air because he's just left sitting on the Statue of Liberty Captain America shield in somewhat of a fugue state as as Tom Holland has to do his final bit of growing up and make his last sacrifice to really become Spider-Man.
Yes.
Because since the Goblin had destroyed the Magic Go Home box, the cracks in reality are opening up, and everyone who knows who Spider-Man is waiting to flood into the MCU.
And as I said earlier, potentially us.
Yeah, but that's a metaphysical discussion that
we've been going almost 3 hours.
Yeah,
let's probably not go too far down that rabbit hole.
And also, on one hand, this is thematically appropriate because it brings the arc of Peter coming into his own as a hero rather than as a choosing the path of the hero.
Yeah.
Accepting the responsibility,
the consequences. I mean, essentially, because this whole thing is due to something him wanting to. This is accepting the consequences of his own actions.
Yeah. But not only that, but it also mechanically from a storytelling point, it gives Doctor Strange something to do so he doesn't just solve the fight.
Yeah.
Because he's, using all of his magic to try and keep, more people from coming through instead of just solving the Green Goblin fight.
Yeah.
Basically it keeps it, by, once again, taking the analogy of the Magic Get Home box being the plot. When the Green Goblin destroys the plot, he keeps it a Spider-Man movie instead of it turning into a Doctor Strange movie.
Yes.
And, Spider and, Tom Holland, would everyone forgetting who I am fix it? Doctor Strange says it will, and he's like, okay, do it.
Yeah.
And he gets his chance to say his goodbyes, and it has one last kiss with MJ.
Yeah.
And
he does make the sort of promise that he'll try and find them, afterwards. But okay, put a pin in it because that's not exactly what happens.
Well, I feel that we can move on to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because, like I said, thematically, the repair, very much the end is wrapping up the thematic arcs. We've already wrapped up the discussion on reparative versus punitive justice by quote unquote curing the Goblin, as opposed to killing him out of vengeance.
Yeah. And
we've already had most of the characters from the previous franchises coming to a somewhat redemptive closure to their arcs. And so we then move into Tom Holland coming into his own as Spider-Man rather than as Iron Spider Jr.
Yeah.
And so he goes back to the donut place that MJ works at and orders a coffee, and he's about to spill that, he's about to spill everything.
Yeah.
And he's kind of fumbling his way through it, trying to, find the nerve. And then she moves her hair aside, and he sees the bandage from, the cut she got because of the situation he pulled her into. And the Peter Parker martyr complex,
this is
comes up.
This is like the Sam Raimi 2002, where I'll always be your friend, MJ, and walks off, kind of thing. Like when he, walking away when Mary Jane, confesses her that she's in love with Peter, and he walks away because it's like that whole the people I'm close to are going to get hurt.
Yeah,
and
the one thing that makes Peter Parker, and no matter what the universe, is the massive martyr complex that he has.
Yeah.
I mean, like, canonically speaking, Peter Parker's martyr complex is so big and so strong that it can outdo outright reality warping. For those of you who aren't aware,
I'm going to tell you that there's Christian saints that have got smaller martyr complexes than Peter Parker.
Like, for those of you who aren't aware, in the House of M event, where Scarlet Witch, rewrites the universe to give everyone happy endings. Peter, even though Peter Parker is living as a quote unquote mutant celebrity in that universe, and Uncle Ben and Aunt May are still alive, and he's married to Gwen Stacy. His martyr complex won't let him live peacefully with that. So he has a diary full of how the Marvel universe how his life actually went in main Marvel canon.
Yeah.
And he goes crazy and ends up becoming the Green Goblin and sabotaging his life. Because of his because his martyr complex was too strong. It was so strong that it overpowered reality being rewritten. So, and we get a shot of Peter moving into like a rundown, dingy Queen's apartment.
But we also get the scene at the Aunt May's grave as well, don't we? With Happy, and it's like he kind of knows he knew May through Spider-Man, but doesn't realize Peter's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He's
like, he asked Peter, how'd you know May? And Peter says, through Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And back in the apartment, we have a great brief flash on screen of a sewing machine with blue and red fabric, and Peter's...
and again, this is like true again, that final thing about what you've been saying throughout this whole stream of this is like their final moment. He's no longer Iron Man Jr. He's Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's Spider-Man.
It's like that, having to just putting on that suit that he's made himself, I think probably is that final thing.
Yeah.
That little, that little cherry on the top kind of thing.
And listening to a police scanner on his phone instead of relying on, Stark AI.
Yeah.
And just one, and it ends with, Peter Parker is Spider-Man now. Basically, we get some web slinging with him in the classic suit. But before we finish off, there is one.
So nerdy. As you're a rodent, don't you mean Ratman?
Yeah, because bats aren't rodents.
Yeah,
they're Chiroterans.
And by the way, is your alias Roland?
Yeah,
Nerdy's British. You'll get that.
But so during the the chat between Electro and Andrew, we get the great exchange with, you were from Queens, you were helping out low income people, poor people. I thought you would have been black.
Oh yes, and I had that little Miles Morales kind of thing going in my head. I was like, I hope we get a live action Miles soon. I do believe it's in the works.
Yeah, I think there is a live action Miles Morales in the works, but honestly,
I have no idea who's playing him now.
Honestly, I mean, I just hope that it's different enough from what we're getting from Sony.
Yeah, it has to be, I think.
Yeah. And of course, we learned that that those weren't all of, in the post-credits scene. So in the theatrical cut, there are 2 post-credit scenes. One which we're about to briefly discuss, and one that's a trailer for Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah.
In the extended cut, the trailer for Doctor Strange 2 is replaced with a montage showing that not only did the spell erase Peter Parker from everyone's mind, but it also made it so that his face was covered up in every picture of him.
Yeah.
But anyways, cut to Mexico. And Tom Hardy is having a drink, talking about aliens with a bartender.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I've got Moretti. I don't have Corona. But yeah.
Eddie, we are drunk. We are going skinny dipping.
I'm not gonna. Again, I try to ignore the whole thing because I always thought of Venom as its own standalone film.
Yeah,
kind of thing. But I'm going to ignore any potential continuity issues here because we've established that you could have multiple. You could have the same people same actor playing characters in multiple universes. So I just let that whole thing go.
So I was upset about that in credit scene. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I knew that, Venom was its own thing and there was no Spider-Man in that.
Oh.
But in the end credit scene for Venom 2,
I haven't seen Venom 2, actually.
Neither have I. I haven't seen either of the Venom movies. They're on my list.
I want to watch. I want to watch it because I do believe Woody Harrelson's in Venom 2 as Carnage, and I just that alone could be excellent.
But anyways, in the end credit scene from Venom 2, we learn that the symbiotes are a multiversal hive mind.
Ah.
And the Venom symbiote connects Eddie to the multiversal hive mind just as the spell is being cast.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. So there is an explanation for it I was unaware of. Okay.
There is a canon
But
explanation.
yeah, but I let it go. I let it go because I was like, okay, we've already established in this that we could have the same actor portraying the same character in multiple universes, like with Jameson and with Daredevil.
Yeah.
So I just assume it's the same thing here with Eddie Brock. I'll just let it fucking go. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
But the obviously the whole punchline to this scene is that he's having this drink in the bar and like having the back and forth with Venom, and I loved the little line about the Hulk.
Yeah.
That was
And you thought the Lethal Avenger was stupid.
yeah, it was. But the whole point being is as Doctor Strange's spell sending everyone back happens, you see Eddie Brock goes away, but a small bit of the Venom symbiote is left there on the bar.
Yeah.
And basically the cock tease here is Venom's now in the MCU.
Yeah. So, and I don't know. I think
And also, can I just point out something? Just thinking about that scene as well. Remember before Eddie was taken back through the portal.
Yeah.
They was talking about going to they was talking about going to New York and finding this guy Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That little bit of the Venom symbiote's here. Do you think we're getting Black Suit Spider-Man in the MCU?
Who knows? Maybe.
I think that might have been a teaser for it.
I mean, we'll have to see, but we'll have to hope that any plans for Spider-Man 4 gets delayed until after the writer's strike, because we know what happens to superhero movies if they get made during a writer's strike. Cough. Yeah. X-Men Origins Wolverine. Cough.
Yes.
So anyways, that was our discussion on Spider-Man No Way Home. And we've only managed to go a half hour over the runtime.
Yeah. And only 20 minutes over the extended version, which we didn't watch.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I don't think. I mean, it's a good movie, good bit of popcorn as well, obviously. But yes, there's definitely some deeper themes under this if you want to look. And I said, the two big themes we got out of this is the nature of punitive justice and restorative and reparative justice. And obviously the whole thing of Peter Parker as a character, I think we learned a lot here. But it also is popcorn enough that you can sit back and just enjoy this movie. It's a good.
Though, I will say, like, it is kind of a shame that Peter didn't reconnect with MJ, because all throughout this movie, she's the one who is able to say, no, you're getting into a martyr complex funk. Get yourself the fuck out of it.
This is why we have sequels, Ring, so that Peter can reconnect with MJ.
Yeah.
It might take a little while as another Marvel film that I will not give spoilers away for. I saw recently, but
well, also,
about when it's about relationship, people trying to reconnect relationships they don't remember they had, sort of thing. So,
is that Quantumania? Because
I just put it in the private chat ring, but I don't think you've seen it yet, so I won't get it. That's why I didn't want to go.
Oh
too
no,
far.
no, I haven't seen it yet, and
yeah,
I'm gonna have that's on my
yeah.
I would have seen it.
And by the way,
life
it's
happened.
Brilliant. By the way, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I would have seen it, but life happened, or rather, the end of life
happened.
happened.
Yeah.
But so with that, you got anything coming up?
Nothing scheduled, but usually there's I could always count on people on the internet being stupid and giving me content within a 7-day period. So there's a good chance something will happen. It's just like a sweepstakes on who's going to be the people to do it. Will it be Atheist Alliance International? Will it be S.J. Thomason? Will it be Kevin Sorbo? Will it be Lawrence Fox? Who knows?
Given the fact that it's Pride Month, my money is either on Sorbo or Thomason.
No, if it's Pride Month, my money's on Lawrence Fox.
Yeah. Well, I mean, surprising that we haven't had anything from the channel Punching Bag, but that being said, I don't think there's anything new Harry Potter related in the pipeline, so there's no reason for her to stir up controversy to try and stir up sales. But anyways, so next week we are covering Pride.
Okay, now when we're talking Pride, we are talking about the 2014 movie Pride.
Yes, about the miners' strike.
Yes. Now, and I'm going to just say, I want to say for the record, I have been badgering Ring and Noodle for like 2 years for this fucking movie.
Yeah.
Okay, it's what I will definitely be here next week. Well, because this is a movie I love.
Yeah, and we would have done done this last year, but I was, I lost internet and I was moving. So
yeah, I know, but yeah, I should just say I have been lobbying for almost 2 years on this channel to get for this movie, and it's not that Ring and Noodle didn't want to watch it. It's just like as we said, things got in the way or whatever, and we're finally going to do it.
Yeah, it was it was first brought up after Pride Month that year ended. So we're like, okay, we're going to put it on the docket for the next Pride Month.
And shit happened.
And shit happened. Yeah. So
it's, but yeah, I'm absolutely going to plug the shit out of this over the course of the week, because I think this is such an underrated movie as well.
Yeah.
So,
and the week after that, we are going to kind of have a media musings first, in that we are going to be kind of revisiting.
We're not doing a Kevin and Sorbo film, are we?
No, we're going to be kind of revisiting a piece that we already talked about.
Okay.
Because for those of you who have been a friend of the channel since near the beginning, when the trailer for Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1 dropped, I got so hyped that we just did Dune the novel as a topic. Well, week after next, and on our Father's Day, because my dad really enjoyed the Denis Villeneuve adaptation and was really looking forward to part 2 before he passed. We're going to be covering part 1 of Denis Villeneuve's Dune. Because like about a week after he died, the trailer for part 2 dropped, and I watched it, and I kind of went all weepy for like 4 hours.
Yeah. So you've been forewarned. If Ring gets weepy during that stream, you now know why.
Yeah. So next week we're doing Pride. And then the week after next, we are doing a Media Musings first and kind of revisiting content. But I feel that's kind of different enough because, you know, we were talking the novel last time, and we're actually talking.
Yeah, I haven't seen the film Dune. I haven't seen the film adaptation of Dune yet. So one thing I know is that sometimes film adaptations can be so different from the books that they merit their own streams.
And for those of you who aren't aware, yes, we are talking about the 2021 film adaptation, not the 1980 something one that starred Sting. But that taglines.
Always remember, with great power, there must always come great responsibility.
Oh, and also, sorry, expect sometime either this coming Saturday or next Saturday, one of these Saturdays, I'm probably gonna do a live. I'm probably going to torture myself live on stream by reacting to Ben Shapiro's review of Denis Villeneuve's Dune.
Your funeral.
Yeah. And with that, remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you what to think, but to give you questions to think on. And too often, we forget that.
Salute.